Elaine is right. This came about during the door-to-door campaign in the district, and she also hit on something else that was, I think, correct, was that what we saw was a problem. And what we saw was a problem we tried to solve, where a resident said that we also have cats around here. Can we pick up cats? And we said, well, yeah, the process is that you have to sign an affidavit. You have to kind of, I'm trying to understand all the process, but I know that one of the biggest one was that as soon as we said that you had to sign an affidavit as a resident, we completely lost that resident. They said, all right, never mind. We'll just leave the cats there. So we thought to ourselves, well, if this is a problem that exists, how do we tackle it? Because we felt just powerless at that point. So we tried to come up with a situation, and I think it's proved to be very complicated and difficult, because sometimes you do have residents who just have something against their neighbor's cat who runs and gets through their trash. Mm-hmm. And I feel for that resident, and I wanted to do something about it, but I don't want to lay down a policy that blankets all over the entire city, because that's what the policy that we have will do, where you do have some people who just want their neighbor's cat picked up, and it may not be causing a problem. And restraining cats is a different story from restraining a dog, I think. And so we tried to solve a problem that we saw. We realized it was a little more complicated than we'd expected. But in most cases, that's the side I'm going to try to take, is the side of the resident who is trying to give me a problem, and I'm going to look for a solution. In this case, it was a little difficult, but in other cases where we're just not picking up enough other dogs, or we're not responding to enough of their calls, I'm going to try to do what I can to help them. So it's about streamlining that, and I think in some cases it maybe doesn't make me a fan with some folks who don't want us to increase our intake, but if it increases the quality of life, or it improves the public safety in my district, then I think that's where I'm going to fall.
Right. Part of what you're touching on is a problem that is, in order not to overdo, in order not to continue to make it difficult to achieve no kill, we have decreased our intake in a number of ways, including.
Yeah.
And the only thing I wanted to say, and this comes more to the city attorney's office than mine, although I do get a lot of complaints in my office. On a lot of the animal cases, a lot of it is neighbor stuff, and there's no win on the deal. If the case gets dismissed for some reason, then the neighbor that wanted it prosecuted is up there complaining in the prosecutor's office or in my office. Or if it continues to get prosecuted, then you have the defendant that's coming in saying, I'm being harassed by my neighbor. And so that actually is a really common problem that we have in the residential type problems of unrestrained or barking dog, or a lot of stuff with the cats. So
can you send them to mediation? No.
Right. Let the prosecutors handle that.
We're going to open up for questions in just a minute, but before we do, I want to talk a little bit about the adoption shelter that is going to be built in Brackenridge Park. I think the price recently doubled, right? The commitment from $2 million to $4 million. What is this shelter supposed to accomplish? What is going to be magical about it that is going to help us get to the no-kill goal?
The adoption shelter at Brackenridge, the reason that doubled was before this year, the plan had been to develop that facility in stages. So first stage would be an adoption facility only. Then when more money was available, they'd add on a spay-neuter clinic and an education center. So it'd be a multi-purpose facility ultimately. But the recommendation was this year with the strategic plan, let's go ahead and go for the whole enchilada at one time, and let's build it out and make it complete. That's why the price doubled on it. And I'll just go ahead and make my statement that I think the center at Brackenridge is a great thing for San Antonio. You need a place where it's more accessible to residents. The location out on Highway 151 is out on kind of the extreme edge of the city. Hard for people on the east side and north side to get there. Brackenridge Park is much more centrally located. It's much better known. I think that many residents of the city, if you ask them where the Animal Care Services shelter was, they'd probably tell you it was at Brackenridge Park, because they never caught on to the fact that it moved several years ago. And I also think from a symbolic standpoint, I think it's a great statement that we're building a no-kill facility for adoption and spay-neuter purposes only on the very site where San Antonio distinguished itself as one of the most efficient catch and kill cities in the nation. I think building it on that spot is a great statement that we want to do things differently in San Antonio.
Well, I'll just say I love the idea of the potential of what this adoption facility is going to have. It's located at the zoo. Hopefully folks who are visiting animals at the zoo are going to have this strange kind of euphoric feeling for being in love again and trying to find another love at the adoption center. So I'm glad and I'm hopeful that that's where it goes. And I think it makes a statement about where the city stands on this issue. Because in this fiscal year budget, we were not going to fund that entire portion. And if you talk to the leadership at ACS now, those tell you that we have, look at it as three different branches here. We have enforcement, we have controlling the pet population, and we have live release, which is spay, neuter, adoption. And I think it's probably weighted a little heavily on live release and spay, neuter, adoption, probably more so than I would like to see. I'd probably like to see a little more on the enforcement side. But I think, like I said, it sends a message about where the city stands on this with respect to how we're trying to move to this no-kill initiative. And I say that maybe we're not doing so much on enforcement because when I went on my ride along with my ACO officer, we were out there for 3 hours and we didn't pick up a single dog. But we had a log of about 400 or 500 calls of residents who wanted us to come and do something about those dogs. So we weren't able to do much there, but I do think that in reaching the no-kill, it's okay if we're going to have a little bit more on the live release, spay, neuter, adoption, because I have a lot of confidence in how we're going to target and how we're going to reach folks to get them into compliance. And that's why I'm glad that the adoption center is getting the money. I hope that it's up and running by 2013. I think that was the last timeline date that I thought about I'd see. But I do hope that we don't forget about the fact that our ACOs need some help as well. And we need some help in some of the districts. Because what we have here, I think, I'll be very clear and as frank as possible, is an unequal distribution of the problem. And an unequal distribution of the problem on the enforcement side. And so that's why, if I'm here advocating for anything, it's making sure that we don't neglect that fact. But we as a city have sent a message that we want to partner with life release.
Yeah, if you could expand a little bit more, when you say we have an unequal distribution of the problem and an unequal distribution of the solution, talk specifically about the numbers and what you mean in terms of parts of town.
Yeah, and I think using the word problem is harsh. It's just an unequal distribution of response that we're not getting to. And that's the response of residents who are in this district, who are making the calls. Who I just have to say, I'm sorry, we weren't able to get to you. Our animal care officers were not able to get to your call. You do have to continue to call and call. But and my relief to them is continue to make the 311 call, because we're going to create a collection of where those calls are coming from, and we're going to go in there. We're going to educate those residents on how to come into compliance within the first 2-3 weeks, but then we're going to come back around. And if they haven't come into compliance, we're going to say, you know what, we tried the best we could to make sure that pets were restrained, that pets were taken care of, and then we came in to try to answer that call, the one you made 3 months ago that we never responded to. So that's right.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, we're going to go ahead and open up to questions. I'm going to hand my microphone over to my partner, Greg Jefferson there. And please, we want you to ask questions. Do try to make them succinct questions so that everybody gets a chance.
Am I on?
Yes.
I put this in text format so I can ramble on. So I'm going to read it to you. You talk about people getting their pets sterilized, but that is long term. How about now? The pack of 9 dogs that I see running outside the Alamo Dome 5 days ago, just lost it, that hypothetically mauls a child's face. Who pays for that? Who now has the greater right? The poor person that has originally taken the responsibility to take these animals, that you feel bad saying, I don't want to give you 9 citations. That's also the same woman that's responsible for this child being mauled by 9 dogs. Working in I'm also a nurse in a children's hospital. I see this. And who pays for it? We do. We all pay for it, because largely the individual doesn't have the money to pay for this, the parent. So we're paying for it because we as a whole feel bad telling the old woman that has 3 or 4 dogs, that she's gonna get these citations. And that's not fair. That's putting the right of the animal and the right of this old woman ahead of the right of the child. And that as much as I'd love to see no kill, I don't think we're there right now. I really don't. So why aren't we, as ACS, why aren't we doing tranquilizer guns? I know it seems harsh, but the 9 dogs out there, I stopped. I mean, I have a lot of experience with animals. I stopped, I tried to get them in the car. None of them, each one looked at each other, like, I'm not getting in there. And they were huge, they were over 55 pounds. So they do that the same thing when they're gonna attack. They look at each other, what are we gonna do? He's attacking, I'll attack. Very dangerous. They don't have the rights that humans do. As much as I love animals, they do not have the rights. So why aren't they tranquilizing? Why don't we allow ACS to tranquilize?
Why aren't we tranquilizing?
Yeah, that's a good question. I asked the same thing while I was riding along with my ACO officer, and I think there's some good reason for it. The approach I've seen is chemical capture, and I believe that involves the tranquilizers. And it would have been a better way of solving our problem that day of getting to the 400 calls than our approach. Our approach was to find out if the dog was friendly, we'd come up to it, kind of give them that little, I don't know what you call the dog call. And if it didn't, we didn't catch them. And you're right, it's not helping us out. I think maybe a better approach is, and I think we've added investment in this fiscal year's budget to our dog traps so that we can get some of those dogs. I don't know the specifics around how, I mean, the rights of the animal, I completely understand the argument there, but if it helps us capture, and I think there's only a few ACO officers who are specifically trained to use those guns, so it does take an extra set of training for those, so I'm not sure whether we can or cannot.
Yeah, actually, Joe Angela with ACS is here, and he nodded when I asked him if he wanted to sort of weigh in on this topic.
Councilman, you're spot on, and yes, we do have chemical capture. We do use that when the animal is that aggressive, so it is a resource that's available. And when you call in and you're interviewed, that's an option that we can discuss with you.
So when I call in and I say there's 9 dogs outside the Alamo Dome, and you're going to say, how aggressive are they? You're going to say, I don't know, but there's 9 of them. Then what? Because I don't know, then it'll
Right,
take 3
so then we
days.
would go out and investigate. And again, a pack of animals that are assembled aren't necessarily a pack of dangerous dogs. Sometimes they're just there. So if the animal has exhibited tendencies that are going to be, that would pose you or a threat to the community, we'll take elevated measures to mitigate that.
What's the response time?
For a
If I recall.
immediate threat, it's 3 hours.
How do we know? How do you know if it's an immediate threat?
Has the person bitten you, or do you feel that you're going to be bitten?
But that's because I'm now, I have a car behind me, I'm stopped, I'm 60 feet from them. That's different than a child with a hamburger.
Let me just help you understand. We get about 80,000 calls a year, and bulk of them are stray animal calls. We can't physically can't arrive at each one of those calls. So then we have to triage, much like police or fire or any other emergency situation. So if it is an emergency, life or limb, we're going to get there. It's our priority 1 call.
Let me ask you, is it against the law, and Your Honor, is it against the law for someone to shoot a stray animal if it's in an area?
Yes. No.
Let's let the
Yes, no.
So I want to get back to the policy question. Like, first I just want to say, it's like, can we just not refer to it as a cultural problem? Because like I lived in a low-income neighborhood, and I live in a really rich neighborhood, and it's like it's more about like poverty and some older people that can't take it. So let's not call it cultural things. That's just messy. So what a policy thing is, like, I hear 2 things. Like, I have a husband who is a part of the feral cat, taking care of feral cats, and a cat owner and a gun owner, and I kind of see a similarity with gun control, and like it's like you have a right to bear an arm, but you don't have a right to form a militia unregulated. So what I think to challenge the city policy-wise, I would like to be able to keep trapping and neutering dogs and cats because I can afford to and I want to contribute to my community. However, you know, these wild dogs that are very dangerous, I think there needs to be a clear delineation of policy. We should not be categorizing individual feral cats and the stuff that we're trying to do in the community with wild animals out of control. Like, come up with policies that say, how do we address you know, a cat colony? How do we address a wild pack of dogs? Because that's separate from people in the community who are trying to actually, you know, donate their time to fix the problem. Like, I think that's my solution. Like, would you all consider that, like, defining, like, something for the animal control people, like wild pack alerts, and the wild pack task force?
So what's your question?
My question is, like, would you consider a policy like that?
Well, I think under that policy, you'd have to be able to identify that pack 1, pack 2, pack 3, pack 3, all over the city. Right now, we are getting calls that are priority 1, priority 2. We don't get a classification that says this is a dog colony of 6 that is friendly. Don't worry about coming for them. I mean, we just respond to it. Residents call into our office and say, I have an elementary school that 6 pack of dogs come by every single morning. How are we going to do something about that? All I know is that I need to do something about a pack of dogs that's around an area that school kids are walking in front of.
So that's no.
So I'm not sure, because you want to get to a policy where...
No, I'm saying, like, I'm trying to think of like a solution, right? Like I think ACS, like you say, there's 2 big problems. Like it's not an old lady with 3 cats or 3 dogs that are kind of fed and kind of contained, not contained as well. It's not the same priority of a pack of 9 dogs. You know, like, it is a priority, but it, you know, it falls down there. And the police department, the fire department have, you know, created a system to prioritize emergencies. It sounds like we need one for this too.
Well, I think when I was making that statement, when I opened up, the fact that this city is as big as it is now, I think what you're seeing with the councilman's efforts and the changes that we've made at ACS and some of the city manager's approach to the thing, they're all problems that everybody's trying to get their hands around. So if I tell you I set up an animal control docket, I could tell you I understand exactly what you're saying, because the feeding the feral cats is one issue, and I'm a runner too, okay? So I've been chased by dogs before, so I understand those issues, and the pack of dogs, but you also have to understand that at a city budget level, they're having to allocate budget dollars every year, and I just know from what I saw this last go around, when you start getting into fire, PD, animal control, and everything else, it's less and less taxpayer dollars to be spread out to fund these things. So when he's telling you that they don't have enough guys to make the calls, I'm just telling you as a citizen of the city of San Antonio, I could see where that's probably true. Because we all see a lot of these, whether it's stray animals or whatever going around, just as a citizen you see that. And no, they couldn't afford to pay that many guys.
Elaine, but to your point, we are there.
Can I?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think maybe I'm going to say. I think I'm going to say the same thing that you are.
Go for it.
Because we are getting smarter and we are prioritizing. But let me tell you, in the past, every call we got in was a priority 1. Now, what we're doing is we're prioritizing according to what the description we get from the person who's calling in. So in the past, the stray dog was prioritized just as much as the colony of 6 dogs by the school. So that's why we're saying we may not get to that other half of stray dogs just yet. That's why we're doing the campaign to go into the areas where we get the most of just stray dogs. And that's why you'll see a map here that has those calls and it's identified. So we're getting towards a policy there. And I think we haven't maybe made it as public, but I think we're heading in that direction.
Great. I think we have a question up here, and then go back.
I think I'd like to address, your concern and her concerns, and just because there's a pack of 9 dogs, it doesn't mean that they're necessarily dangerous. And in quite a few of the situations, some of these packs are abandoned dogs that have been dumped in parks and at cemeteries and such. These are being cared for by members in the neighborhood. They would be what would be called community dogs. And this is something that I would like the city to take a look at in the future. is that community dogs that are being cared for by people in the neighborhood, by rescuers, a lot of these dogs are being slowly socialized and getting them to trust people again. And as they become more socialized, they're going into foster homes and they aren't being rescued. They cannot be rescued straight off the streets. So it takes several months sometimes to get them ready. But if the caretakers or the people in the neighborhood who are taking care of them, they're identified as not being aggressive or dangerous, can these, let's say, colonies or community dogs be left alone? Because the ones who are really a problem are the ones who are chasing the runners, the aggressive dogs. Some of them are owned, some of them are strays. And we know that a lot of them just come, when their owners go off to work, they let the dogs run around the neighborhood and they form packs. And they go chasing after, they go into the schoolyards and such. I think we need to use a little bit of common sense in somehow prioritizing calls, as you said, so that they are either from a community dog group or they're a feral pack and they are potentially dangerous. And those are the ones that need to be picked up. And so I would not automatically assume that a group of 9 dogs are potentially dangerous. So, my suggestion is with 153,000 stray dogs as an estimate, ACS is currently able to handle about 28 to 30,000 a year. That leaves another 125,000 still in the streets. So let's prioritize which ones need to go in, because those should be the ones that are a threat to public safety. And when at all possible, let's leave the ones who are not hurting anyone alone.
I want to swing back around to prevention and enforcement again, and ask the council member and the judge whether, when you hear from people who have been cited for having dogs, especially around the spay-neuter issue, whether you ever hear, well, I don't have time to go, I have to be on my job. Do you get a sense that people who may be working, because of the correlation, as this young lady said, between economics and where the problem is most acute, it's not hard to imagine that people may work multiple jobs and have very little time to go to the clinic, even if they're given 10 days grace by the judge. Has that served as an issue in y'all's discussions with people?
Absolutely, it has, and it's surfaced in an area where they found, I think, a solution to it, and where it is where we're moving. So in Austin Pets Alive, Amansa Pet had the same problem where they were going to lower income communities, and they were offering the service, and they asked them to make an appointment and then go ahead and come back on 2 or 3 days later, bring your pet, we'll have them spayed or neutered. They said, we need to make it easier than that, and we're saying the same thing. We need to make it easier than that. If they're willing to have their pet spayed or neutered, we will take the dog, take it to ACS or wherever it goes with our high-value partner, and then we'll bring it back to them after it's been spayed or neutered. So I think that's one of those solutions that we've taken from another city that's seen it work.
Thank you.
My question is, if you are having a problem with a pack dog, say, and you call 311, and you call 311, and you call 311, and you're not getting a response, you're still having a problem, what do we do in the short term? Because from my case, dogs run through my yard every day, they're causing damage, they're chasing the outdoor cats. I still need help. So what do we do in the short term until somebody can get out there?
Do you want to?
Yeah. So as we said before, we're prioritizing the calls. The first priority is life and limb. So if there's a threat, imminent threat, someone bit you, that's our first priority. If it's a roaming dog, it's a roaming dog. It's not going to get the priority that we have. If it's a nuisance dog, it's not going to get the priority or priority 1. But if it's something that's ongoing, let's get the ticket in, let's see where you fall on the map, because we're creating a data center of all the problems all the calls that we're getting. And maybe there's a pack forming in your community. So we're going to take that intelligence every quarter, revisit it, see if there's a problem, send a sweeps team in there and address it. The only thing that we ask is that if it's not life or limb, give us the opportunity to get those problems addressed first and then get to more nuisance calls.
And real quick, can you remind us how many ACOs there are right now?
36.
Right.
We're budgeted for 36, we're down by 2.
Over here.
I'm chair of the Animal Care Services Advisory Board, and as you know, we have a representative from each district at the advisory board. It's an open meeting, so people could come there. We represent the people in our district. You can call your representative. You can give them the questions you want answered, because we get a chance to ask the director and Eric Walsh the questions. It's like an open forum, but not. The audience does not participate except for citizens to be heard, but we get the opportunity to ask. My question is, things being presented to council, we would like as a board to be presented the same thing that is being presented to council before is presented to council, and I am asking if that is possible before a vote is taken on council, because we have not been given the same opportunity to comment.
Okay, really quickly, I think with respect to the presentation that you all see as an advisory board and the presentation that we all see, I apologize if we're looking at something different. You telling me that is the first time I've heard that, so we'll work on that for you, Seth.
Okay, great. We got that.
I guess my angst comes from, we're here today to talk about making our city a no-kill, right? And everybody has a concern about stray animals and stray cats and all the direction that we're trying to take to get us there. But isn't it obvious that we're going to have to be a kill city for a long time before we can even begin to be a no-kill city? People are upset about packs of dogs in their neighborhood, and I'm walking my dogs and I see 9 dogs and I turn around because I don't want to get attacked. They might be complacent animals, just community animals on the street, and people are feeding them. But I'm not going to approach them, and I'm not going to call 311. I'm going to turn around. The best we can do is try to track down where they belong. If they don't belong to anybody, they get picked up, they get adopted or euthanized. And then we try to track down the people who have the dogs that are letting their dogs loose, right? Offer them a warning or a citation. But isn't it obvious that if you don't have the means to take care of the animal, you shouldn't have the animal? That the animal should get confiscated from your hands, something should happen to it, and then once we have an education and a pipeline and a way for people to get the information for them to be a responsible pet owner, that we can't have people just having pets loose in their yard. That is where the problem stems. People get pets, they don't care for them, the pets become a nuisance for everybody else. So are we going to have, to say that we're going to be a no-kill city, isn't it obvious to the council members that we're going to have to be a kill city for a long time?
I know you're asking the question to Councilman Saldaña, but I want to answer the question from a no-kills perspective, and that is problems in cities that have high stray pet populations and cities that have a high number of animals that go through their shelters and get euthanized. Enforcement has not been a solution. San Antonio was the best city in the nation, arguably, at catching and killing animals for decades. And it never changed. The same number of animals were being picked up every year, same number of animals were being put down every year, same number of animals are on the street every year. You have to go to the root of the problem. And the no-kill equation, it's called, is a set of actions that can be taken and strategies that really address those root problems, and those are the only things across the country that have really worked. And so I'm going to say, by pursuing these no-kill activities and no-kill equation, don't look at no-kill as a unachievable goal, a lofty, noble goal. It's really a set of very concrete actions and strategies that address the animal population.